The dining room fell silent as Patricia placed the envelope on the mahogany table. 12 pairs of eyes stared at her. The entire Morrison family gathered for their annual Thanksgiving dinner. "What's this?" her mother-in-law Helen asked, her tone dripping with condescension. Patricia smiled calmly. "Open it and see." Helen tore open the envelope. Her face went pale as she pulled out the ultrasound images. Not one, not two, but 3 separate photos. "That's impossible," Helen whispered. "The doctors said you were..." "Barren?" Patricia finished. "That's what you all kept telling everyone, wasn't it?" Her husband David grabbed the photos, his hands shaking. 3 ultrasounds, 3 different babies, 3 different surrogates. "Surprise," Patricia said softly. "You're getting triplet grandchildren in 4 months. I hope you have enough room at this table for them." Before we continue with this incredible story, please take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit that like button. Share this video with your friends and family so they can enjoy this amazing story too. Trust me, you will enjoy what happens next and end this story. Now, let's get back to the story. 6 months earlier, Patricia Sunderland sat alone in her Los Angeles apartment, staring at her divorce papers. After 5 years of marriage, David Morrison wanted out. The reason was written clearly in his lawyer's letter. Petitioner seeks dissolution due to respondent's inability to conceive children. Patricia's phone rang. Her best friend Maria's name flashed on the screen. "Did you sign them?" Maria asked without preamble. "Not yet," Patricia replied, setting down her pen. "I'm meeting with my lawyer tomorrow." "Good. Don't sign anything until you talk to her." Patricia walked to her Kit Sunderland window. Outside, the California sun was setting over the city where she'd built her successful career as a commercial real estate developer. She'd sacrificed so much for David, including opportunities to expand her business internationally. The Morrison family had never accepted her. From their first meeting, Helen Morrison made it clear that Patricia, with her middle-class background and Asian heritage, wasn't good enough for her son. But Patricia had tried. She'd attended every family function, learned their traditions, smiled through their cutting remarks about her career focus and lack of domesticity. Then came the fertility struggles. Patricia remembered the day everything changed. She and David had been trying for 2 years when she finally scheduled an appointment with Dr. Reynolds, a renowned fertility specialist. The tests revealed that Patricia had severe endometriosis. Natural conception would be nearly impossible without extensive treatment. David had seemed supportive at first, but within weeks, the Morrison family swooped in like vultures. "Our family has been blessed with fertility for generations," Helen announced at Sunday dinner. "David deserves children, real children from his real wife." Patricia's sister-in-law Christine smirked. "Maybe you should consider stepping aside. Let David find someone who can actually fulfill her duties as a wife." David said nothing. He just stared at his plate while his family discussed Patricia's reproductive system like she wasn't sitting right there. That was 3 months ago. Now here she was, about to become a divorced woman at 32. Her phone buzzed with a text from David. "My lawyer says you're stalling. Just sign the papers, Patricia. Let's both move on." Patricia looked at the divorce papers again. Then she picked up her phone and dialed a different number. "Dr. Reynolds? It's Patricia Morrison. I need to discuss alternative options with you. All of them." The next morning, Patricia sat in her lawyer's office. Margaret Sunderland, no relation, despite the shared surname, reviewed the divorce papers with a critical eye. "He's asking for very little in the settlement," Margaret noted, "almost like he's in a hurry." "He is," Patricia replied. "His family already has someone picked out for him. Christine's friend, Amanda. She's 24 and apparently very fertile." Margaret set down the papers. "What do you want to do?" "I want to know my options. Can he legally prevent me from using our stored genetic material?" Patricia and David had created embryos 2 years ago, before they knew about her endometriosis. They were stored at a fertility clinic in Santa Monica. Margaret leaned forward. "The consent forms you both signed give either party the right to use the embryos, but typically, that's within the context of the marriage. What if I use them after the divorce?" "That's a gray area. If he signs away his parental rights, which these papers indicate he's willing to do," Margaret paused, "then technically, You could proceed. But Patricia, this is complicated legally and emotionally. I know, Patricia said, but I want to explore every option before I give up. What Patricia didn't tell Margaret was that she'd already had another consultation with Dr. Reynolds, and what the doctor proposed was unprecedented. 1 week later, Patricia met Dr. Reynolds at her Malibu clinic. The doctor's office overlooked the Pacific Ocean, serene and private. I've reviewed your case extensively, Dr. Reynolds began. Your endometriosis makes carrying a pregnancy extremely dangerous, but your embryos are excellent quality. I've been researching surrogacy, Patricia admitted. Dr. Reynolds nodded. I have 3 potential surrogates who've expressed interest in your case. All are experienced, healthy, and understand the legal complexities. Patricia's heart raced. 3? What I'm proposing is unusual, Dr. Reynolds continued. You have 6 viable embryos. We could implant 2 embryos in 1 surrogate, as is standard practice. Or, she paused, we could use 3 surrogates, giving each pregnancy the best possible chance of success. 3 separate pregnancies? 3 women carrying your and David's biological children simultaneously. The cost would be significant, and the logistics complex. But given your circumstances and resources, it's possible. Patricia sat back in her chair. The Morrison family had spent 5 years telling her she was inadequate, broken, unable to give them grandchildren. How much time do I have to decide? Patricia asked. The sooner the better. These embryos won't remain viable forever. Patricia made her decision that night. She signed the divorce papers, including the clause where David relinquished all rights to their stored embryos. 3 weeks later, Patricia sat in Dr. Reynolds' clinic with 3 remarkable women. Jennifer was a 30-year-old mother of 2 from Oregon who'd been a surrogate twice before. I love being pregnant, she explained simply, and I love helping families. Rosa was 28, a nurse from Arizona who wanted to help fund her medical school education through surrogacy. And Keisha was 32, a fitness instructor from Nevada, who'd watched her sister struggle with infertility and wanted to pay that kindness forward. You understand this situation is unique, Patricia asked them. All 3 women nodded. My ex-husband and his family don't know about this, Patricia continued. They won't until the babies are born. This will create complications. We're prepared, Jennifer assured her. Dr. Reynolds explained everything. 1 month later, all 3 surrogates were pregnant. Patricia received the news while closing a major deal for a downtown Los Angeles property development. Her assistant knocked on her office door. Dr. Reynolds called. She said to tell you that all 3 birds have landed safely. Patricia excused herself from the meeting and called the doctor from her private office. All 3 pregnancies are confirmed and progressing normally, Dr. Reynolds said. Congratulations, Patricia. You're going to be a mother, 3 times over. Patricia sat down heavily in her chair. She was going to have 3 babies, 3 biological children with David's DNA, whether he wanted to acknowledge them or not. Her phone buzzed. A text from Christine. David and Amanda are engaged. Save the date for their engagement party next month. Oh wait, you won't be invited. My bad. Patricia deleted the message and smiled. Meanwhile, in Pasadena, David Morrison was having dinner with his family. Amanda sat beside him, showing off her enormous engagement ring. 3 months, Helen gushed. Finally, we'll have grandchildren on the way. David's father, Richard, raised his glass. To new beginnings and fertile futures. David forced a smile. Something had been bothering him since Patricia signed those divorce papers so easily. She'd taken almost nothing in the settlement, just her business and personal accounts. You're too quiet, Amanda whispered to him. Just tired from work, David replied. But that wasn't it. Patricia had been too calm during their last meeting, too composed. The woman he'd married would have fought harder, argued more. Christine leaned across the table. I heard Patricia is focusing entirely on her business now, probably for the best. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers. Everyone laughed except David. He remembered how excited Patricia had been when they first started trying for children, how she'd cried when test after test came back negative. He pushed the memory away. This was better. Amanda would give him the family he wanted. 5 months passed. Patricia's life transformed completely. She worked from home most days, managing her business remotely while staying in constant contact with her 3 surrogates. Each woman sent weekly updates, photos, and ultrasound images. Jennifer was carrying a boy. Rosa was carrying a girl. Keisha was carrying another boy. Patricia prepared 3 nurseries in her new house, a sprawling property in the Hollywood Hills with an ocean view. She hired a nanny service, bought 3 of everything, and began reading every parenting book she could find. Maria visited often, helping Patricia prepare. "Have you thought about what you'll tell David?" "Why would I tell him anything?" Patricia replied, folding tiny clothes. "He signed away his rights. These babies are mine. But they're also biologically his. The Morrison family has a right to know." Patricia's expression hardened. "They had 5 years to treat me like family. They chose cruelty instead. These children will know love and acceptance from day one." "What about when they ask about their father?" "I'll tell them the truth. Their father chose not to be in their lives." Maria didn't push further. She knew Patricia had been through enough. In Pasadena, Amanda was now 4 months pregnant. The Morrison family celebrated at every gathering, planning elaborate baby showers and nursery themes. David found himself thinking about Patricia more often than he wanted to admit. He'd driven past her old apartment once and discovered she'd moved. Her social media accounts were private. She'd effectively disappeared from his life. "Good riddance," Christine said when he mentioned it. She was never right for this family anyway. But David's mother, Helen, seemed distracted lately. She'd been researching fertility clinics. David had seen the browser history on the family computer. "Why are you looking at fertility clinics?" David asked her one afternoon. Helen jumped, startled. "Oh, just curious. I read an article about embryo storage and wondered." She trailed off. "Wondered what?" "Nothing. It's nothing." But it wasn't nothing. Helen had suddenly remembered that David and Patricia had created embryos, and the divorce papers she'd sneaked a look at didn't mention destroying them. 3 months later, Patricia received the call she'd been waiting for. "Jennifer went into labor," Dr. Reynolds reported. "You should head to the hospital." Patricia grabbed her prepared bag and drove to Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. 8 hours later, she held her son for the first time. "Hello, James," she whispered to the tiny baby boy. "Welcome to the world." 2 weeks later, Rosa gave birth to Patricia's daughter, whom she named Lily. And 3 weeks after that, Keisha delivered Patricia's second son, whom she named Michael. Within a month, Patricia had 3 healthy infants. Her home transformed into organized chaos with 3 cribs, 3 feeding schedules, and round-the-clock help from her nanny service. Maria visited daily, marveling at the babies. "They all look like David," she observed. It was true. All 3 children had David's distinctive features: his dark hair, his straight nose, his deep brown eyes. "Good," Patricia said, feeding Lily. "Let there be no doubt when his family eventually finds out." "When are you going to tell them?" Patricia smiled mysteriously. "Soon, very soon." The Morrison family's annual Thanksgiving dinner was a tradition spanning 3 generations. This year, it was particularly special because Amanda was 8 months pregnant and due any day. David stood in his parents' dining room, watching staff set the table for 12 people. His entire family would be there: parents, siblings, cousins, Amanda's parents. "Everything looks perfect," Helen said, adjusting a centerpiece. David's phone buzzed. An email from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, "You're invited." He opened it curiously. Inside was a formal invitation to Thanksgiving dinner at an address in the Hollywood Hills. The sender's name made his blood run cold: Patricia Sunderland Morrison. "David, you look pale," Amanda said, waddling over to him. "It's nothing," he lied, deleting the email. But it wasn't nothing. Patricia had used her married name, something she dropped immediately after the divorce, and she was hosting Thanksgiving dinner? The morning of Thanksgiving, Patricia dressed carefully in an elegant burgundy dress. Her 3 babies, now 4 months old, were dressed in matching cream-colored outfits. The nanny had arrived early to help. Maria was already in the kitchen, Sunderland, helping prepare food. Are you really doing this? Maria asked. They deserve to know, Patricia replied, and I deserve to see their faces. At 11 o'clock, Patricia's doorbell rang. She opened it to find a courier holding an envelope. Patricia Morrison? That's me. This is for you. Requires signature. Patricia signed and opened the envelope. Inside was a legal document from Helen Morrison's attorney, demanding information about the embryos created during Patricia and David's marriage. Patricia smiled. Helen had finally figured it out, but she was too late. At 1 o'clock, the Morrison family gathered around the table in Pasadena. Everyone was present except David, who'd called saying he'd be late. Where is he? Helen asked, checking her watch repeatedly. He said something about an errand, Amanda replied, worried. David was sitting in his car 3 blocks from Patricia's Hollywood Hills address. He'd driven there on impulse after receiving a second email from Patricia that morning. The truth is waiting. Come if you dare. Finally, he started the car and drove to her house. The property took his breath away. It was massive, modern, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. This was where Patricia lived now? He rang the doorbell. Patricia answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting. Hello, David. She looked stunning, confident, happy, everything she hadn't been during their last year of marriage. What's going on, Patricia? Why did you invite me here? Come inside. There's something you need to see. David followed her through a stunning foyer into a bright living room. And then he heard it. Babies crying. Multiple babies. What? He started. Patricia led him to a nursery where 3 cribs stood side by side. In each crib was an infant, and standing beside them were 3 women he didn't recognize. David Morrison, meet your children, James, Lily, and Michael. David's legs nearly gave out. What are you talking about? Our embryos, the ones from the fertility clinic. I used them after our divorce. These are your biological children. David stared at the 3 babies. They all had his features, unmistakable even at 4 months old. This is impossible. I signed papers. You signed away your parental rights, Patricia corrected. You didn't sign papers preventing me from using the embryos. Check with your lawyer if you don't believe me. You've had these babies for 4 months and didn't tell me. Patricia's expression hardened. You spent 5 years letting your family humiliate me. You divorced me because I couldn't carry a pregnancy. You moved on within weeks. Why would I tell you anything? David looked at the babies again. 3 children. His children. Does my family know? Not yet, but they will. I've sent invitations to all of them for dinner here next week. Thanksgiving dinner, actually. I thought it fitting. Patricia, you can't. I can and I will. These children exist, David. They're Morrisons, whether your family likes it or not. David's phone rang. Amanda's name flashed on the screen. He didn't answer. You need to leave, Patricia said. You have a choice to make. You can tell your family yourself, or you can let me do it. Either way, they're finding out next week. David drove back to his parents' house in a daze. When he arrived, everyone was finishing dessert. Where were you? Helen demanded. David looked around the table at his family. Amanda with her pregnant belly, his parents looking annoyed, Christine smirking, everyone who'd made Patricia's life miserable. I need to tell you something, he began. 1 week later, the Morrison family stood outside Patricia's Hollywood Hills home. All of them had received her formal invitation, and Helen's lawyer had confirmed what they'd all feared. Patricia had legally used the embryos to have David's children. This is a trap, Christine hissed. We're not going in, Helen declared. But Richard Morrison surprised everyone. Yes, we are. Those are my grandchildren in there. He rang the doorbell. Patricia answered, wearing a calm smile. Welcome. Please, come in. The family filed into her home reluctantly. When they entered the living room, they found 3 high chairs arranged in a row. In each chair sat a baby. Helen gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The babies were unmistakably Morrisons. They had David's features, Richard's strong jawline, even Helen's distinctive eye shape. Everyone meet James, Lily, and Michael, Patricia announced. Your grandchildren. niece, and nephews. The room erupted in chaos. Christine started yelling. Amanda burst into tears. Helen stood frozen, staring at the babies. But Richard walked directly to the high chairs. He knelt down in front of little James, who gurgled happily at him. "Hello, young man," Richard whispered. "I'm your grandfather." Helen finally found her voice. "You had no right to do this." "I had every right," Patricia replied calmly. "These embryos were created during my marriage. David signed away his rights. I used what was legally mine." "You did this for revenge," Christine spat. "No," Patricia corrected. "I did this because I wanted children. Your family spent years telling me I was worthless because I couldn't give you grandchildren. Well, I found another way." David, who'd been silent until now, stepped forward. "I want to be involved in their lives." Everyone turned to stare at him. "What?" Amanda shrieked. "They're my children," David said quietly. "I can't just pretend they don't exist." Patricia studied him carefully. "That's your choice to make. But these children will be raised knowing their worth isn't determined by other people's expectations. They'll know love without conditions." Helen was still staring at the babies. Tears streamed down her face, but not tears of anger. Tears of recognition and perhaps regret. "They're beautiful," Helen whispered. "They're absolutely beautiful." Michael chose that moment to reach out toward her, making grabbing motions with his tiny hands. Helen moved forward instinctively, and Patricia, after a moment's hesitation, lifted Michael from his high chair and placed him in Helen's arms. Helen held her grandson, and something in her face cracked open. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Patricia, I'm so sorry." The room fell silent. "I was cruel to you," Helen continued, rocking Michael gently. "I thought I knew what David needed, what our family needed. I was wrong." Christine looked horrified. "Mom, you can't be serious." "Be quiet, Christine," Richard said firmly. "Your mother is right. We treated Patricia terribly, and she still gave us these beautiful grandchildren." Patricia felt Maria squeeze her hand supportively. "I'm not asking for your approval," Patricia said clearly. "I'm not asking for anything. I simply wanted you to know that your grandchildren exist. What happens next is up to David." David looked from the babies to Amanda, to his family. "I want to be their father, a real father, not just a name on a birth certificate." Amanda stood up, her face red. "You want to play daddy to your ex-wife's revenge babies?" "They're not revenge babies," David said quietly. "They're my children, our children," he added, looking at Patricia. "Legally, they're my children," Patricia corrected. "But biologically, yes, they're half yours. If you want to be involved, we'll need lawyers and custody arrangements." "I understand." Amanda grabbed her purse. "I can't believe this. I'm leaving." "Amanda," David started. "No, you choose. Your ex-wife and her babies, or me and our baby." David looked at the 3 infants, then at Amanda's pregnant belly. Finally, he said, "I have 4 children, Amanda. I can't choose between them." Amanda stormed out. Christine followed her, throwing a hateful glare at Patricia. But Helen stayed, holding Michael. And Richard picked up little Lily, examining her tiny features with wonder. "May I hold my son?" David asked Patricia. Patricia lifted James from his high chair and placed him in David's arms. The baby looked up at his father with curious eyes. "Hi, James," David whispered. "I'm your dad. I'm sorry it took me so long to meet you." Patricia watched this scene, her ex-husband holding their son, his parents cradling their other children. This wasn't the revenge she'd originally fantasized about. It was something more complicated, something more human. "You're all welcome to visit them," Patricia said finally, "but on my terms, with respect. These children will never hear hateful words or feel less than anyone else. Is that clear?" Helen nodded, tears still streaming. "Crystal clear." Richard looked at Patricia with newfound respect. "You're a remarkable woman. David was a fool to let you go." 6 months later, Patricia's house had settled into a new rhythm. David visited every Tuesday and Thursday evening, and every other weekend. Helen came every Wednesday afternoon, bringing gifts and offering to help. Richard visited monthly, teaching the babies silly songs and reading them stories. Christine never came, but Patricia didn't mind. David and Amanda had separated. Their daughter Emma was born healthy, and David split his time between all four of his children now. On a sunny California afternoon, Patricia sat in her backyard watching James, Lily, and Michael play on a blanket. They were almost a year old now, starting to crawl and babble. Maria joined her with iced tea. "Any regrets?" Patricia thought about the question carefully. She'd lost a marriage, gained 3 children, and rebuilt her relationship with her ex-husband's family on entirely new terms. "None," she said finally. "This is exactly where I'm supposed to be." David arrived for his evening visit, and the babies immediately crawled toward him, all 3 trying to reach him first. He laughed, scooping them up one by one. "Hey, Patricia," he called. "James took 3 crawls in a row today, a new record." "I saw," Patricia replied, smiling. Helen arrived minutes later for her weekly visit. The woman who'd once called Patricia inadequate now spent hours on the floor playing with her grandchildren. As Patricia watched her expanded, complicated family interact, she realized something profound. The Morrison family hadn't laughed at her because she was broken. They'd laughed because they didn't understand that family comes in many forms. She'd proven them wrong, not through revenge, but through resilience, not by destroying them, but by creating life. 3 babies who would grow up knowing they were wanted, loved, and valued for exactly who they were. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.